All set.
Okay. Double check. I will call the April 8th, 2021 Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting to order at 6:31. And opening with the following statement. As chair of the Northwood Planning Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Planning board members should unmute themselves and introduce themselves and state whether there is anyone else in the room with them for, what is that, right to know request? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Chair Bob Strobel. No one else.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Yep. Joseph McCaffrey here, and all by my lonesome.
Lee Baldwin, no one's here. Well, except the dog.
Al Kreider, my wife is here with me.
Betty Smith, the cat's around here somewhere.
Okay. And Mr. Jandeberg just joined us. If you'd want to. Yep. Anyone else in the room with you, Tim?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Voting designation is all members present. Thank you, and thank you all for joining on time when we changed our meeting hours. We have minutes of March 25th to cover, and I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
In a second. Motion by Ms. Betty Smith, second by Mr. Jandeberg. Discussion on the draft minutes. Hearing none, I would. Or any discussion? Further discussion, sorry. I'm out of sorts. I'm reading it, making sure I don't have any notes in there myself. Hearing no discussion, Susan will do a roll call vote, please. You're muted, Susan.
You'd think I'd be better at this by now. Tim?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Al?
Yes,
And Bob?
Yes. And Susan will email off annotated notes just for some things that are not substantive.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let's get myself up here. There we are. First up is case 18-13 and 19-20 Millstone Realty Trust and Ledgewood Realty Trust. Excuse me. And we have Mr. Holden with us.
Yes, how are you tonight?
Okay, how about yourself? Good to see you again.
Always good. Always good.
Good.
So,
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you bring us up?
I was going to say,
any changes or status, what you've heard, what you want to tell us.
yeah. We got the comments on the conditions of approval, which we sent to James, and he marked them up, and I think they went to the town's attorney and he marked them up some more. Or something like that.
I think everything that was on there was my comments.
Was it?
So everybody had reviewed them and didn't have any further concerns or further things to add. But my understanding is everything that was on the document you received came from me.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the document that's JEB changes to plan set.
Yep.
311. Okay. For my own, since we brought it up, or I brought it up, whatever. I had one question on that, and it's just a point of clarity, nothing substantive. If you refer to sheet 2, item 8, safety measures, there's a reference to, on the 4th line, about after the area of the quarry is completed. And I was curious as to whether that meant completed for excavation, completed for reclamation, or other. It was sort of vague.
What we meant when we wrote this was completed, excavated, graded, reclaimed,
Okay,
and all done.
okay, Just-
And the reason
that's
we were
fine.
trying to do, the reason we were trying to do that was just so that if we had a steep area and we want to put some
Sure.
fences, some barriers.
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
once we get all done, that all went away. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It was more for that reference. I could not tell if, think my first thought was after you've excavated, possibly, or if that was never mind, doesn't matter. Completed is fine. No need to waste time on it. It's my own misunderstanding, and that takes care of that. That was the only
If
question.
you wanted to be slightly more clear, instead of completed, you could say reclaimed or after reclamation of an area is completed.
Completed is fine.
Maybe that's,
So, yeah.
so,
if you-
so
But
David and I
agree.
went,
Go ahead.
David and I went through this several times.
Yep.
And we didn't have anything that we objected to. There was only 3 things, sort of like your comment about what does complete mean. There was a comment on the first page, item number 3, quarry access. And we had a we had a section there that said, if in the future Millstone wishes to use the existing wood road, which is between his site and what was the tractor sales, I think it's car sales now.
Yep.
That he'd have to come back to the planning board because he's going through his retail site and not using the wood road. But if for some reason he wanted to use that, and the comment was, please clarify the statement. This is intended to allow a hauler contracted by Millstone to take materials directly from the pit offsite, or does it anticipate customers not associated with Millstone accessing the area to the rear? The idea is to never have a retail person going to this quarry. They don't belong out there. The only time that he would, and he doesn't really need to use the wood road to do this, if he sold 5,000 yards of gravel to the state, he wouldn't want to bring it out to the front, dump it in a pile, pick it back up again and put it in a truck. And he'd want to be able to drive right through the site and deliver it. And right at the moment, we don't have any interest or need to use the wood road. I think that was more on our part so that no one would ask us that question. And the answer we would give if someone asked us would be, if we wanted to go that way, we'd have to go to the planning board first, and we have to get a modified driveway permit. So it was really just clarifying that we're not going to use it, but if we opt to in the future, we have certain hurdles we have to clear. So
Okay, so that statement is intended to basically only be operative in the event that you have received permission for the other access point.
yeah, and it says there it says Millstone would first have to obtain site plan approval from the planning board, obtain a driveway permit from DOT, and implement all improvements required under that permit to be able, and other state and local permits that would be required. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
wasn't
sure why-
reading that sentence a couple sentences down as being conditioned on the first one. I thought it was just a paragraph of various things related to access. So that makes more sense.
yeah, so the bottom line is he's not intended to do that. And if he decides to do that, he'd have to jump through some hoops. On the 4th page, number 13, there was comments about the phasing plan, and we don't actually have a plan that says phasing plan. There's no titled phasing plan. So in that paragraph 13, the 3rd line down, it probably should have said phase 1, 2, 3 as shown on the site plan, not on the phasing plan. And the phasing plan we put on there not to be the phasing necessarily that we're going to go 1, 2, 3. It's like, where on the site are you? Well, I'm over here in phase 1, and I've got that all, almost done, and I'm not going to 2. I'm going to go to 3. And it was really just sort of a labeling so you knew where on the site you were talking about. That's all. So it probably should say site plan and not phasing plan, because there really isn't a phasing plan. I think of a phasing plan as you do phase 1 and then you do phase 2, and we wouldn't progress that way. We would.
So I think for that, if phasing plan could be changed to site plan, and then where it says phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 through 8, if those could be relabeled to, I think pit 1A, pit 1B, pits B and
Sure.
C is how you have it. I think that makes sense.
That makes more
That would
sense.
work out fine.
Yeah, and there. Yeah, I don't see where you describe above a phasing plan.
Right.
So, I mean, I know you have site plan, but yeah, well, the language needs to be changed right there.
Yeah. So we'll call it pit 1A, 2A, and then we can call it site plan. And then,
That makes more sense.
yeah. And then the last thing we had was on like page 6, I guess. Item number 23. And this talks about some options of consolidating the lots together so that, and I guess the thought is, what if he sells all the lots in the front and you can't get to the back, and how are you going to do that? And so what David is proposing to do is to give himself an easement across all the lots that he owns to the back, so that if he were to, if he gets hit by a bus and his family sells it off, it's got an easement on it. Whatever happens in the back, if the town wants to go out and reclaim it because you're not doing anything, they can drive down the easement and be able to get there. So we'll get something put together that says he has an easement, and everybody that has business out there to inspect or whatever has the same rights to that easement, so that when David's not around and the family doesn't want to do anything and the town has to reclaim it, they can go out there and drive on the road and nobody can tell them they can't do it. So that was a pretty good comment, actually, I thought. So.
Yep.
Other than that, we don't have any comments.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board on reference to this? We're talking about the JEB changes to plan set. James, comments?
Well, Bob, I'll
Go ahead.
ask something. This is Joseph. Just if Mr. Holden could, I suppose, or our planner James there, could just, not that I think this is any difficult issue or any, for me right now, just the understanding of it. I don't happen to have the site plan in front of me. I have a fair image of it, but just what was described regarding this easement. Why wouldn't the working road that's been laid out and proposed and little variations on it, why wouldn't that provide the access that you're talking about with this easement? I mean, Mr. Daco owns the land in the first place,
So-
why would,
We have no concerns about the ability of the road that's proposed to provide access back there. And Mr. Daco does currently, have an ownership interest in every parcel that's part of this application. But
Uh-huh.
there is nothing to prevent Mr. Daco or his successors from selling any of those parcels individually if they remain
Uh-huh.
separate parcels.
Okay,
So
all right, that
we-
explains it. That's
Yeah,
good, James.
so
That's
we
good.
wanted to make sure that that easement was there just in case the parcels were sold to separate buyers.
Got it.
Whether it was two excavation companies and one wanted pit C and the other wanted A and B or what have you.
Sure,
We wanted
Okay.
to avoid future arguments about whether anybody could get back there for
okay, it was,
excavation, for reclamation, all of that.
sure. Regarding future disposition, I
Yep.
see it now. Okay, that's good, thanks.
Hal?
Not a question in terms of the details, because I thought those worked out pretty well. But I'd just like to hear again, where will all this be located?
Yep.
Are we putting it on the plot plan? Are we having a separate document? And the reason I ask is I was at training on Tuesday and I recollect them saying something about put the important stuff on the drawing. So I'm just wondering how we're handling it.
Yep, so generally speaking, the two places we can put things are in the notice of decision that is a record of what you, the board, have decided, or in notes on the plan set somewhere. Or I guess in some other document in the case of easement language that you have to record. So the two documents that you have from the last set of things that I sent you, you have a 3/11/21 review comments of town planner James Burdine.
Right.
I have laid that out as I propose that language to appear in the notice of decision. So everything in that document will be copied and pasted into the notice of decision for each case. And I've noted what I'm proposing for the site plan and what I'm proposing for conditions of approval for the excavation permit. And I'm suggesting different conditions for each based on the associated regulations.
Yeah.
Mr. Holden had also suggested having a lot of that language that had been in what was originally proposed as a development agreement between Mr. Daco and the town.
Right.
He suggested placing a lot of that language that he felt was important onto sheet 2A of the plan set. That's where it currently exists, and that's where the vast majority of those track changes can be found if you look at your plan sets.
Okay.
So what I have done is everything that I'm proposing is a track change. I'm suggesting is a track change in the plan set itself. Again, apart from like 3 notes at the beginning and 2 at the end or vice versa, it's all track changes for 2A.
Okay.
Everything else that I am suggesting in the staff report would be on the notice of decision.
Right.
Generally speaking, where those things are in parallel, the notice of decision is more vague and highlights the fact that this is a milestone, but there may be more details related to that milestone on sheet 2A.
Okay. And everything fits on 2A, huh?
Keep in
It
mind,
might be a 2B.
Small print.
they're what,
I
24 by 32 inches? You can always print in 0.6 or in 6-point type.
I have also done the conditions of approval in the notice of decision under the understanding that, I believe we've been operating under that sheet 2A and the notices of decision will be recorded with the Registry of Deeds.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Other questions, comments from the board? Go ahead, Hal.
If nobody else, I have a second question that relates to, did we address all of Winnie's comments?
I was just going to ask Winnie next.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe she's a better judge of that than us.
Okay. I always like to give the board first crack at questions, comments in the meeting, but then I can open it up to public comments if there's nothing, if the board is satisfied with its comments, I'll open up public hearing then. Okay. I'll open public comment on case 18-13 and 19-20. If you would like to speak on this, please get my attention somehow. Either wave your hand, speak, make yourself at mute. And at this point, I believe Ms. Young wants to speak.
Okay, and I'm again representing questions from the Conservation Commission. One of the things was, I know that there's a lot of, I think they're pages 48 and 49, a lot of protective measures for the wetlands once trucks are used for excavation and so on. I wonder which ones or how much will be in place while they're building the roads. I know that you're going to be excavating to build the roads while the roads are in place. What kinds of, obviously you're building those measures as you're building the roads. I just wonder if you could tell me briefly what kind of measures would be in place while you're building the roads themselves.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. There really isn't much clearing to do out there because it's pretty cleared. So the first thing that David would do would be to put in, we're going to use, because most of the work is adjacent to wetlands. So we're going to use a combination of silt fence and silt sock. So we have two, and we use the silt sock first, and then downslope we use the silt fence. So whatever gets by the silt sock, is it is only 8 inches tall, but it does a great job of catching sediment. If it gets by the silt fence, then the silt sock, it'll go into the silt fence. And part of what David needs to do all the time is to be monitoring that erosion control measures. And eventually he's going to have grass growing out there on those side slopes. And we've talked about just leaving the erosion control there and periodically just replacing it, because when you get a big rainstorm and it washes out part of your slope, I mean, we're going to catch it in the silt fence, and silt fence is cheap stuff for what it does. And so that would be at the large crossing where we walked across where the pond has flooded the road, and then up on the crossings as we approach the power line, and then back towards David's office. There is a wetland there that is just behind his office that we have that silt fence in place. Now, we also have measures for our alteration of terrain permit, which are stormwater treatment areas where we're directing the water off the road and into these treatment areas where it gets a chance to soak in and the sediment fall out, and eventually it gets its way to the wetland or the crossing. So those items get built while he's building the road, but the erosion control, silt fence, and silt sock are there in place before he does anything. And we just have a plan that we're going to be, going there and making sure that stuff's in place. And we do that a lot for contractors. And, it's not hard to keep ahead of it. So I think we'll have a pretty good job.
Sounds good. Thank you. The other question I had, and it was a mistake in the lot that's west of Mr. Daco's lot 35 on map 217. And this may already have been corrected. I saw the plan that was sent out prior to the last meeting, but that is all the way to the power lines. That is map 216 lot 81 owned by Co-Brown Academy. And when I looked at the plans, the road that's going to go off to Pit C comes very close to that. It looked like even a retaining wall there. So my question is it a retaining wall? And the other question is, has there been any kind of notification to Co-Brown who owns that? On the plans, it said it was the Giles Lot 77, but it's actually Co-Brown Lot 81 in map, what did I say, 216. I'm sorry, yeah, 216.
We've notified the abutters more than once. And there in that section, this is just as a road crosses the power line.
Yes.
Yes. And Co-Brown's property is out in the pond. Yeah, there's no retaining wall there. What you see on the plan is grading. And what we've done is we've created a ditch. And then as you go down the sheet towards the pond, there's a treatment area there where we would have a grass line ditch, and there's not a very, very big drainage area. So that water would go in there and sit in there and the sediment would fall out. So, but we've notified them as part of our wetland permit, and we didn't get any comments. And in the notification letter, it's got our phone number and it's got my name in it, and they, haven't called us. So.
Okay. And the other thing was initially a letter last June concern for, there's one large wetland with black gum in it. And then there's a small one to the east of that that has some of the oldest black gum trees in it. And I think it sounds like you said it was already cleared. So, I mean, that parts of the lots were already cleared. I was hoping that those two areas were spared of timber harvesting. If I could just ask that.
Yeah, I don't know where they might be, but we did have a person go out there last fall looking for plants and critters that we should watch out for. And I don't remember him saying that we had black gum out there that we should watch out for. So maybe it's not there anymore. It may have gone away.
Okay. Well, I know in timber harvesting, that you can cut anything you want. It's your property. I mean, it's Mr. Dacco's property. I just was wondering about that. So
this was actually cut off before David owned it. It was the previous owner that cut in the back there. He cut on the long narrow lots leading up to the pond from Route 4.
Mm-hmm.
But on the east side of the power line, that was done by somebody else before he bought it.
Oh, because when we did go out there early on, there's a large forested wetland out there that was not cut had not been cut. They had left not only the black gum, but also hemlock and other trees that are in there. It's a large center forested wetland. It's a G7 on our wetland inventory. It's not a prime wetland, but it's on the inventory. And just east of that, there's a small pocketed wetland that had a number of black gum in it. It's very small, sphagnum moss, spruce, but that had not been, the other trees around those hadn't been cut either. And I just wondered if,
So if it's in the wetland, we won't be cutting it because we're staying 100 feet away from the edge of it. So.
Okay, even for the cutting.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're staying 100 feet away with sort of a no touch 100 feet, yeah.
Right. Thank you. That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else? We're on public comment. There are a few members of the public here. Okay. At this time, hearing none, I will close public comment on case 1813 and 19-20, subject to reopening it as needed. Okay, let me pull up. Whoops. Gotta be able to see the meeting here. Okay. We have I'm referring to James's revised Ledgewood Realty Trust site plan review comments from March 11th. Essentially the staff report. I believe we still have some waivers to go through.
I believe you're correct. And I think if it's okay, at some point, I would also like to go briefly through the JEB changes to make sure that, yeah, I think there are one or two things that I pointed out specifically that either I was suggesting that I wasn't sure Mr. Holden would be okay with, or that I suggested the board discuss explicitly. So I'd like to make sure that none of those were sort of skipped over.
Okay, well, why don't we do,
next
sorry.
steps.
Why don't we do that now? Because we've already opened that document up.
Okay. So the first item, yeah, on the staff report where I normally have a make the following changes to the plan set, I have assumed that all of the requested changes to the plan set are in the other JEB changes document. That includes on page two.
There's two JEB change documents?
No, there's one.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, page two.
On page 2 of that document, in the notes on the right side, my second comment, RSA 155E3-6 requires the submission of a plan for the reclamation. So in that note, or in that comment, I'm essentially asking that the applicant submit additional or add additional pages to the plan set that are labeled as a reclamation plan, and suggesting the comment to be pulled from other sheets or repeated from other sheets on those, so that it's clearly identifiable to somebody that looks at this 5 years down the road and they understand this is what the reclamation plan looks like. It includes the final grading and includes the notes for how to do it. So I wanted to make sure that was understood to be a requested change to the plans prior to signing.
And the board has mentioned that before.
And that's not a problem for us. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of them on the first page, as relates to the Millstone Realty Trust change, I think there are multiple ways we suggest about doing that, but having the comment about this being binding on MRT's successors pulled right up to the front so that those two things are next to each other. And it's clear that Millstone Realty Trust really means Millstone Realty Trust or their successors in all instances. And again, all of that's already in the plan, but having that proximity, I hope, would avoid a little bit of confusion.
That's fine also, so.
Okay.
And I guess I'm thinking is you're going to insert those changes and just send it back to me and I'll stick it on the plan.
Okay, I can do that.
Yep. That's the easiest way, yeah.
What's the next? On page 4, item B, I have a note discussing the certification from Holden Engineering that site stabilization has been achieved. And there we're talking about, what is the mechanism that states that we have completed this? Is this something that Mr. Holden as an engineer can just sort of put his stamp on and say things are stabilized and we're good to go? Or is this something that we physically want our engineer to sign off on. I have I believe I have, and I intended to set this up so that that question can be answered by our engineer as we discuss when any necessary inspections would occur. Is somebody's dog participating? Or is this just my speaker that's being weird?
I'm
pretty sure
hearing it as well.
Okay.
I haven't,
Sorry,
Sound
I'm
like
trying
dogs?
very hard to focus and keep going.
I haven't been able to determine who it is to be able to ask them.
Whose dog?
They would mute themselves.
Occasionally it lights up.
While you're figuring that out, I have a question, Bob.
James, are you,
So, yeah,
does it-
I think that, you know, if Mr. Holden has strong feelings about that certification being accepted, I think we should discuss it tonight before we move on this. If he's happy to discuss it with the engineer and work it out between them, that's fine.
and which item, one second, Tim, because which item was that? I know it was item B.
So this is page 4, item B, so it's the second
But
paragraph.
I need a number because your numbers aren't, or your pages aren't numbered.
10B.
10B, okay. Thank you.
Ain't no dog barking here.
So that's towards the end of that paragraph, it was a strike through that I had made a comment for why I was striking through and replacing with where item B, Roman numeral 1 had already existed. I added 2 and 3
Okay.
as my suggested revision to that.
Thank you. Tim, you had a question or comment?
Well, I guess you've cleared up in the short run what my question was, but I'm having a bit of trouble following. I have a document 3/11/21 review comments of town planner James Burden,
Yep.
which doesn't seem to have much to do with what we're talking about. And then I have another document, sheet 2, and if I go to that page 4, I can find what he's talking about. But I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Because nothing's numbered, and I have 2 documents that I think are both on 3/11/21.
They
One
are.
is review comments, and the other is starts at the top of the page with sheet 2.
Sorry, I've been referring to the one that starts with sheet 2 by the name of the file.
Okay, and I finally figured that out, so thank you. But I am having problems following along with you, and I would like to be able to.
Sorry about that, Tim.
Okay.
I have yet to figure out, just as a very brief aside, a way to come up with a standard format so that we can figure out exactly what document is being referred to, whether it's electronic or whether it's on paper.
Yeah,
But
I normally try to be more organized with my staff reports, and in doing the track changes for the full plan set, I'm sorry, I think I got a little bit, I was more focused on the comments than the organization and readability, and I probably could have done a better job. So sorry about that. Item 13, bonding. We've talked about changing the phasing language, and I think that should be fine. Item 13A regarding the reclamation bonding, I sort of arbitrarily set the provision of the estimated areas to be excavated as annually. So if the board or Mr. Dacco and Mr. Holden would like to discuss a different time period apart from annually, my main concern would just be that we do it consistently enough that, you know, nobody forgets how and when they're supposed to be doing it.
I think annually works out fine because he's gonna have to replenish or renew his bond annually because it's gonna expire, and well, it actually won't expire. It won't expire until you tell them it expires. But so I think that's a good mechanism. And if midstream, he reclaims a big area and it's halfway through the year, he can always come back to the board and say, I got this all reclaimed. Why do I have a bond out there now? So I think we could deviate from it, but it gives us a place to go to stay consistent. So I think that works fine.
And then item 23, it sounds like Mr. Holden, Mr. Gaka would prefer 23. I probably should have gone A, B, and C instead of 1, 2, and 3. But it sounds like if they prefer option number 3, then I would suggest, as we're doing some of these changes, that we take out 1 and 2 and lot conveyance just state that MRT shall put legal easements in place to cross and recross for any successors.
That's fine. That's what we want to do is the easement. So.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the last one that I had added, that had been recommended as a possible condition by CMA, that again I inserted for discussion in case there was any, was number 29, tying explicitly to some best management practices during the operation.
And that's fine also. You have 2 29s now.
You're correct.
I think there's 2 24s too.
In doing a last pass through,
I'm
I
right
will
about it.
also pay a lot closer attention to
Yeah.
making the numbering work.
I didn't mention it for that reason. It was more that in case there's any question as to which number.
Yeah, whenever I had a section to add, I was more worried about getting the language in than
Not a problem.
the
For
details.
7 pages to have 2 typos, that's pretty good. Okay. Questions, comments from the board? Well, thank you for putting this level of detail there on that. There are some things that I had not thought of myself on that, so nicely done. Okay. Let me pull up. 1, 2, 3.
I have an off-the-wall question, Bob.
Go ahead, Tim.
You have 2 computers
I have 2 computer screens,
you're
which
working
is
with?
why I keep looking
Okay.
to my right.
I just trying to figure out what you're doing.
Yes, that's.
You do it well,
I-
so I wanted to figure it out.
I keep the Zoom meeting over on this side, and then I keep the document over on the other side.
I'm figuring that out. Okay. Good job.
Sorry. But yeah, that's why I look off to the side. I should probably put my camera on the center because then you wouldn't see me looking to the side. But, oh well.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have a request for 5 separate waivers. 5 points, 4 waivers. And we should discuss them before acting on them. I'm just looking at the double check. Okay, we've had public comment, we've had the board comment. Is there anything else we need to discuss before we start actually taking action on this application? Okay, just double checking. We'd like to make sure that everybody's had a chance to speak before we start making decisions. So I would entertain a motion to approve. Oh, sorry, I would entertain a motion on a waiver to section 7A1C, auto and pedestrian circulation plan.
So moved.
Well,
Second.
just on the motion, I brought up the waiver. I did not say whether it should be approved or not. because the board should, or the chair should not make a motion. So please amend a decision as to how you want to vote on it.
And just to note, Mr. Chair, I'm suggesting that all waivers be conditioned on that a note be added to the plan set identifying the waiver and the date of approval by the board.
Correct. Okay. So Betty, do you want to?
You going or me?
Doesn't matter. I had it down as Betty has had the motion and Tim had the second. But someone needs to decide as to whether you want to vote in favor or deny it in the motion.
Oh, Betty's being quiet. So motion to approve waiver for section 7A1C, and that it be put on the paperwork that Mr. Burden just said. I didn't write it down.
Okay, good enough.
Second.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, discussion on the waiver for the auto and pedestrian circulation plan. Okay. And Mr. Holden's already stated that in general, there should not be retail sales for pedestrians out beyond the retail sale area in the front. Okay, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Tim,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. Same.
Motion to approve the waiver. You ready?
Go ahead.
Section 7-A:1D lighting plan. The applicant not proposing to any new lighting and subject to the conditions that Mr. Burden mentioned earlier.
Okay, we have a
Second.
second. Okay, motion by Mr. Jandever, second by Ms. Betty Smith. Discussion. Mr. Holden, you have your existing lighting is, I think, what, just on the shed, is that correct? Out front?
That's what, excuse me, that's what he has now. It's a little solar light that he has out there, and that would be the only light that we would have is so that we can find the door.
Yep.
But we're not looking to light the place up, so.
Can't imagine why that would not be important. It was more, I wanted to clarify, you have not proposing any new lighting. I wanted to double check that what we had for existing. So. Okay, Susan could do a roll call vote, please.
Al,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
and Tim,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
I have a question.
go ahead.
Is the wording that Mr. Burden's looking for, is that number 5? The applicant will add a note to the plan identifying the requested waivers and date of approval by the board?
That's correct.
Okay, good, thank you. I'll make a motion section that we approve the waivers for section 7A:1E landscaping plan with the following note to the plan identifying the requested waivers and date of approval by the board.
Okay, second. Second by Ms. Betty Smith, motion by Mr. Jandever for the landscape plan. Discussion. So this is the back part of the lot. I think there's an existing landscape plan for the section that goes right along Route 4 from the prior application. Okay. Getting a head nod from
Yes.
Mr. Holden. Just wanted to double check.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep. Okay. Discussion. Howie, I can see your mouth moving. You're muted though.
I was just saying the original plan requires X number of 3-inch diameter trees.
Right, exactly. Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none. Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Betty,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes,
and Bob.
Yes.
Motion to approve waiver number 4, section 7. The applicant requests to draw plans at a scale higher than 1 inch equals 50 feet. The applicant will add a note to the plan identifying the requested waiver and date of approval by the board.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Jandeber, second by Ms. Betty Smith. Discussion. Hal, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand on this one. We had discussed this before and said that some of the drawings wouldn't be very easy to use if we forced that issue. Is this indeed what we're referring to here, where we some of them so we can fit everything on one plan sheet?
Yeah, so that some of my continued description of that refers to that. Some of the original submission that met the 1 inch equals 50 feet was really hard to follow.
Right.
So what we have right now is a combination. We have some that are less detailed overviews that will give you the whole site in context. And then we have a series of pages that are at that scale so you can see the level of required detail on the ground. And I interpret this waiver as granting permission for the combination of the mixed scales that the applicant has provided.
Good question. Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks, Jim.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Susan, could do a roll call vote, please.
Lee,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes,
Betty,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. And I guess after the fact, I should have pointed out that assumption of granting the waiver means, at least my interpretation of it, is that the existing plan set where they are drawn at 1 inch equals 50 feet will continue. Okay. Or remain within the plan set.
That's correct.
Okay, just double checking. Okay, you have your 4 waivers. I'm want to go through the double check the conditions. I mean, I've read through them once, but and at least once, if not
Would
multiple
you
times.
like me?
You want to go
Would
through
you
them?
like me to read them into the record for discussion?
Sure.
Okay. I think procedurally, what I would suggest, if the board is ready to render a decision, would be 3 motions. 1 motion for that first section to stipulate the vesting milestones for the site plan application. A second motion to render a decision, and if you intend to approve the site plan with conditions, and then a third motion to approve the excavation permit with conditions. So I will start with the vesting milestones.
Okay. Yes, because that's a
Big
one.
So I've written it as I intend it to appear in the notice of decision. So it will say the board has agreed to the following milestones for the purpose of determining statutory vesting rights as provided by RSA 674:39. Number
just-
1.
Could you just bring the board up to so we're all in the same spot? This of the prior to final, what is it, page 2, item number 5 in the revised site plan review comments.
I'm still on page 1 below item. So item 5 is under approve the following waivers. Then
Correct.
there is an unnumbered line. So that's where I'm starting, at the bottom of page 1.
Okay.
so the vesting statutes under 67439 deal with, if you accomplish certain milestones, you have the right to continue with your approved project regardless of subsequent changes in the local ordinances. So item 1, the date of approval from which subsequent milestones and periods of exemption are measured shall be the date that the planning board chair signs the approved site plan indicating final approval of the board. Number 2, active and substantial development or building for the purposes of fulfilling RSA 67439 paragraph 1 shall be defined as completion of construction of the proposed wetland crossings according to the following timeline. Item A, the applicant will begin construction of the wetland crossings no later than 24 months after the date of approval. B, the applicant will complete construction of the wetland crossings and fulfill all specific conditions of the NHDES wetland permit within 36 months of the date of approval. C, the planning board may, for good cause, extend this timeline by a majority vote. That active and substantial development or building gets them, I believe it's a 5-year exemption of from subsequent changes per statute. And then number 3, substantial completion for the purposes of fulfilling RSA 67439 paragraph 2 shall be defined as completion and stabilization of the proposed hauling road as determined by final inspection by the town of Northwood's designated engineer. Substantial completion and achieving that milestone would fully vest the site plan approval, and the applicant would be exempt from and have pre-existing non-conforming rights under any subsequent changes to the zoning ordinance or site plan regulations.
Moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. I wanted to at least
Alright.
bring it up for discussion, but motion by Mr. Jandeber, second by Ms. Betty Smith.
Don't we have discussion now?
Now we can have discussion now, which is fine.
Okay, so I have one question.
Go ahead.
Somewhere along the line in 2B, I heard 5 years and I'm seeing 36 months.
Different.
So
things.
the 24 months and the 36 months that I've set, those are the timelines that they have to. I believe it's 5 years, but I could look it up if you want an exact number and confirm that. That is in the vesting statute, so that would be how long they are exempted from any subsequent changes. What that means is that if, say they hit that intermediate milestone of active and substantial development, that buys them 5 years from subsequent changes. So they have pre-existing non-conforming rights. If in year 6, they have not yet hit substantial completion, that final vesting milestone, all of a sudden they have to comply with any changes that have happened in those 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
And that 5-year thing is not by our setting, that's a state statute, is it not?
Correct. That's a state statute. And what state statute says is that we have the ability to set what the milestones for those steps are, but we can't change the benefits that are conferred by vesting. So where we don't currently stipulate what the milestones are in the ordinance, in this case, we felt that it was important to be explicit with what we agreed those milestones would be.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the milestones, and we've discussed it. Any other questions from the board?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
We already have one, Joe. We already have one.
Well, you said, do we have one?
No, I said we
I'm
do
sorry.
have one. Sorry,
Okay.
I wasn't clear about that.
Okay, good.
Do you have questions, or you just wanted to?
No question.
Okay.
I'm good.
Susan, could do a roll call vote, please.
Betty,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. The big one.
Big one. So if the board is amenable to approving the site plan, I am recommending the following conditions. Prior to final approval, so prior to the signing of the plans, number one, resolution of all items identified in the latest version of the document JEB changes to plan set that we've discussed tonight. Number two, the applicant will acquire and provide all necessary federal, state, and local permits and provide copies to the town, including but not limited to NHDES alteration of terrain and NHDES wetlands permits. Item three, the applicant will acquire an updated NHDOT driveway permit or written confirmation that no such permit is necessary for the new excavation areas. Item four, deliver 3 signed and stamped paper copies of the final plan for signature. Item 5, the applicant will attain the following milestones related to the proposed access road. A variance permitting impacts to the Wetland Conservation Overlay District and its buffer where it overlaps with the Conservation Area Overlay District shall be approved by the Northwood ZBA, and I believe that has already been approved as of tonight. Item B, a list of required inspections and or certification milestones for all required drainage and roadway improvements shall be agreed to between the applicant and the Board of Selectmen or their designee, their most likely designee being the town engineer. Item C, the applicant will provide escrow payments sufficient to cover the cost of all required construction inspections. And item D, the applicant will provide a reclamation bond or other surety acceptable to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of restoring any incomplete roadway or drainage improvements to a safe and stabilized natural condition in an amount agreed upon by the applicant and selectmen or their designee. Condition 6, completion of all conditions necessary for final approval within 1 year of conditional approval. The planning board may extend this deadline for good cause by a majority vote. I have added this. It's a little bit unusual for us, but a lot of our timelines typically require some sort of deadline by which a permit will be recorded or things like that. So since final approval is the milestone from vesting, I'm measuring a lot of these other conditions from final approval. So I want to make sure that we don't have this waiting for several years before we get to final approval, and push that timeline even further back. As you'll note, I am proposing that the board can extend this if there's a good reason why it can't be met within a year. So that's everything prior to Bob signing. Next step, prior to excavation of materials for the existing access road to improve that surface. Number 7, the site plan shall be signed by the chair of the Northwood Planning Board indicating final approval of the board. Number 8, sheet 2A, detailed conditions of approval shall be recorded at the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds within 6 months of final approval. Number 9, excavation permit case 19-20 shall be approved. All applicable conditions precedent of approval met and the excavation permit issued. Number 10, only excavation of materials necessary for the improvement of the existing access road may occur prior to the road's completion. Number 11, the applicant will provide to the town engineers a plan of the area to be excavated for road construction materials for the purpose of determining the amount of a reclamation bond or other surety acceptable to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of restoring the excavation according to the approved reclamation plan. Number 12, the applicant will provide a reclamation bond or other surety acceptable to the Board of Selectmen for the purposes described above in an amount agreed to by the applicant and the town engineers. Those last two are because the applicant will be excavating in order to get material for the road. They will essentially have started their excavation, so we need the reclamation bond for the areas where they will be starting. Prior to commercial excavation then, so excavation that they can sell. Number 13, all wetlands crossings shall be completed. Number 14, improvements to the existing access road shall be completed and stabilized. Number 15, all proposed stormwater features shall be installed. Number 16, any final inspections related to installation of wetland crossings, stormwater features, and road construction shall be completed. Conditions subsequent. So that means conditions that will remain in effect in perpetuity and continue to be binding and enforceable on the applicant. Number 17, the applicant shall remain compliant with all conditions subsequent of excavation permit case 19-20, including but not limited to the approved reclamation plan. Number 18, upon completion of the gravel operation or reclamation, all excavation and reclamation of all excavation areas, the applicant or their successors shall place the subject property into permanent conservation as described in note 9 on sheet 2A. Note 9 on sheet 2A is highlighted because I was aware that requested changes would potentially result in having to renumber sheet 2A. So I will make sure that condition 18 matches the correct number of that note if it turns out to not be note 9.
Okay. Okay,
Question before or after the motion?
go ahead, make the motion afterward, doesn't matter.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Let me add some, let's add some language to that to be clear for the motion.
Motion to approve
The site plan was subject to the
site
following
plan,
conditions.
subject to the following conditions.
Thank you. So motion by Mr. Jandeber, just second by Ms. Betty Smith. Okay, discussion on the conditions of approval.
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
So in all cases in the last 40 years, we referred this to, I'm exaggerating, sorry, as 1813 and 1920. So I think that number 9 should say 1813 and 1920, and I think number 17 should say 1813 and 1920.
The reason I have written it the way I have is that I am referring to the notice of decision for the other case. So I have not listed both because in the site plan, I didn't think it necessary to refer to the case number for the site plan. That case number will appear in the top in the heading. So I didn't feel it necessary to refer to it in the conditions. I don't think it would impact anything to add it if you would prefer for me to refer to it that way.
I'm just looking, even as late as our current agenda, it lists both numbers. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, because one is a site plan. 1813 is the site plan.
Yep.
And 1920 is the excavation permit. They're actually separate permits.
That may be, but we've joined them.
Oh yeah. We have definitely joined them. We've heard them together.
Right.
From a legal perspective, I defer to James. I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay.
But
in my opinion, these motions and the notice of decision are the time where we should be breaking them back out. We've heard the testimony together. We have one record that applies to both cases. But when we're referring to the conditions of approval, since some apply only to the excavation permit and some apply only to the site plan, what I had envisioned for those last ones is to explicitly identify which case was the excavation permit in Lincoln.
I think you've heard me expound on the fact that we have had issues in the past, and I don't want any loopholes. If you say there's no loopholes, then I'll trust you, and that's fine.
It's my opinion that there are no loopholes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I had a question on that I lost track of, sorry. If somebody else has it while I'm looking it up, his question or comment, go ahead. I think it was, why can't I find it now? Don't get old.
Too late.
Yeah. It wasn't terribly important. Okay. Questions, further questions, comments? Since I can't find what I was that I wanted to talk about. Okay. Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Lee,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. On item 3, I would entertain a motion to approve the excavation permit with the conditions as listed.
You want me to read the conditions?
Sure.
So prior to issuance of the excavation permit, number 1, resolution of all items identified in the latest version of the document, JEB changes to plan set. Number 2, major site plan case 18-13 shall be approved and all applicable conditions necessary for final approval shall be met. I'm thinking about this now, since we're going to have different files for these, we should probably request delivery of additional copies so that we also have plan copies in the excavation permit.
And that triggered my other question. We don't have any site plans. Do we need any Mylars or any other kind of drawings for permanent storage, or does this go into anybody aside from town?
Sheet 2A will be recorded.
Yep.
Um,
Do they need a Mylar or anything? I'm used to citing it. That's the only reason I brought it up.
Linda, do they need the Mylar to record, or could they record a paper?
They need to record a Mylar, and it needs to be signed by the planning board.
Okay. So let's see if that's the case.
If that's the case, I don't think we
would need to modify our motion item number 4, deliver 3 signed and stamped paper copies of the final plan for signature.
So I think there are 2 ways we can do this, and there's the
like amend
more technically correct way, and there's the less technically correct way. I am adding to the excavation conditions a number 3, deliver 3 signed and stamped paper copies of the final plan for signature. I think the more technically correct way would be to make a motion to amend the conditions of approval that you just signed off on for the site plan to change condition 4 to deliver 3 signed and stamped paper copies of the final plan and 1 signed and stamped Mylar of sheet 2A to the town for signature.
I would like-
The-
I would-
James, say that again.
Yeah.
Deliver 3 signed and,
So it currently says deliver 3 signed and stamped paper copies of the final plan for signature. We also need a Mylar of sheet 2A that would be recorded. So deliver 3 signed and stamped paper copies of the final plan and 1 signed and stamped Mylar of sheet 2A.
Do we need any additional copies for any reason for cross-reference between the two?
The plan sets would all contain sheet 2A as part of them.
Okay, that's exactly what I was wondering.
So the technically correct way would be to require that amended change and tie it to the site plan.
Yep.
The less correct way would be, rather than amend that, amend condition 3 that I'm adding to the excavation conditions.
I would
to
rather
request
have
the Mylar.
I would rather have the case site plan of 1813 stand separate. So I would entertain a motion that I think Mr. Jandeber is mulling over to amend condition 4 of site plan approval 1813 as documented, to essentially to add a Mylar of 2A. If
James,
somebody wanted to make that motion.
Linda, you had
may
a
I
question?
ask a question?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I guess this is to Peter. Is that 2A recordable?
It will be when we get done with it.
Another thing you may want to consider is recording the document of the notice of decision.
I thought when we talked about that was something that the town was just going to do, but if you want me to insert that somewhere, I can.
That would be good. Unless there's a reason not to, but
Hold off on that decision or that motion for now.
So if we were to do that, I'm trying to find the item that I'm thinking of, sorry.
That's okay. What actually, James, what we could do,
So
well, go ahead, it's item 8.
that's what I was looking for.
Yes.
So Linda, would it work for you if we amended item 8 to say sheet 2A detailed conditions of approval and this notice of decision shall be recorded at the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds within 6 months of final approval? So we would already have signed the plans at that point, but that's when there are otherwise recording documents.
well, so, I mean, we can record the notice of decision immediately at the town's expense.
Do you want to just do that, or should we put it in here to stipulate that we're doing it by a certain time?
I
Well, I
think,
don't know how soon anything is going to start, but the sooner it's in there, the better.
I think we can trust that the staff will get it done.
I
Okay.
was gonna say, I'm the same way.
So if that's our preference, not to change any other conditions of approval, I think we're only talking about item 4 then.
Correct. Okay, so we're back to essentially, I'd entertain a motion to amend the site plan conditional approval to add to item 4, a copy of the sheet 2A Mylar.
So moved.
Okay.
Second,
Motion by Miss Betty Smith, second by Ms. Baldwin. Discussion? Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Lee,
yes,
Joe,
Yes.
Al,
Yes,
Tim,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, back to the excavation permit conditions.
Yes.
So this is the final page. Prior to issuance of the excavation permit, number 1, resolution of all items identified in the latest version of the document JEB changes to plan set. Number 2, major site plan case 18-13 shall be approved and all applicable conditions necessary for final approval shall be met. Item 3, deliver 3 signed and stamped paper copies of the final plan for signature. Conditions subsequent. Item 4, the applicant shall file annual intent to excavate forms to the town as required by the Department of Revenue Administration. Item 5, the application, sorry, that should say the applicant will maintain a reclamation bond or other surety acceptable to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of restoring all areas that have been excavated but not yet reclaimed according to the approved reclamation plan as described on sheet 2A note 13. And again, a note to myself to be sure to get the correct number if that changes in fixing sheet 2A.
Okay. Question on item 3, which is the drawings. Is this the case? Do we need to supply a Mylar or paper copy to anyone else from the town, aside from the town?
I don't believe so. The alteration of terrain process is a separate process and the applicant has to apply with DES separately for that. So yeah, I think that these would essentially be 3 additional copies that would be living in the second file folder. I don't think we need a second Mylar for that, as the Mylar recording has already been covered under the site plan.
Okay, just double checking.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mr. Jandeberg. Do we have a second?
second,
Second by Ms. Baldwin. Discussion? Hearing none. Susan can do a roll call vote, please. Whenever she would like to unmute herself.
Sorry. Lee,
Okay.
yes,
Joe,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Al,
yes,
Betty,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay.
Good job, James.
Yes,
you.
definitely.
yeah, that was a lot.
That's, yeah, this was a long process. We were, as an aside, we commented on to my other half and I about how in the UK that building permits going through the planning board process for renovations of houses take, one case, 3 to 4 years. This has been a 3-year process for how many? We're at 166 acres, 120 acres, something like that. So it's good to see it done. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of effort put on both sides, and it's nice to see something that will last a while. And I think we had a good decision, better than the first time around. We had some practice on that.
This was done well.
So thank you.
Yeah, I do have to say that I think the planning board has done a very good job. James has done a very good job. I've gone to thousands of these meetings, and this is a planning board that I don't mind going to get an approval. I can't say that for most of them. So, anyways.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would suggest, since we've been at an hour and a half, a 5-minute break.
Yay.
So moved.
Second.
Susan, I'm gonna try restarting my computer. I'm having problems getting onto my VPN for my staff
Okay.
reports.
Okay.
So I'm gonna leave and come back.
Somebody's licking their feet.
No, we're taking a break, but yeah.
So, Jim, you commented that having two monitors, it doesn't always help you keep track of everything.
Well, I see you that,
Yeah.
sorry, that you're talking with us, but you're able to look up stuff. So that's why I figured out you must have two computers. And I have to think about that because there's been a number of times when I wished I could look something up, but I'm so deathly afraid that if I try to do it on one computer, that I'm going to lose you.
Yeah.
And get out and lose out of the meeting. So I don't, I'm not as adept at computer
Mm-hmm.
as you are. Obviously, it's your business. So
Yep.
Just get another cheap laptop.
and that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, get yourself a Chromebook. They'll work.
Yep, that's what I'm
Work
thinking.
very well. To be honest, when I was doing software development for a good many years ago, I would have at the most I had 6 monitors connected to one machine because it would be, I'd have the code going in one, I'd have a database going in another, I'd have a GIS going in the third, I'd have email going in the fourth, and something else for 1, 5, and 6. And it was not because I went out and bought them all at once, it was because I cobbled them together. But once you get used to having multiple places to look, it's very difficult to go back.
Well, I can see me handling 2 maybe, but
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, and 6, no way.
I got 3 at work, but
Well,
that's okay.
good on you.
Well,
That's your business.
it's my business.
Right. Big difference.
Yes. Okay, are we all back?
James is just getting back.
James is just getting back. Okay. That's right. Is okay.
Sorry, I restarted my computer. I'm
No problem.
having troubles with my VPN.
It's okay.
Right away, I'd say, what in the world is a VPN?
Virtual private network.
It lets me access the files that are on my work server from home.
Yep.
Including, in this case, staff reports.
Yep.
Great.
We can talk about it afterward if you want.
I know.
Okay. Next up is 19-6, Joseph Carter, Father and Family Trust. Have we received anything from Mr. Carter recently?
I have not heard from Mr. Carter, I don't think, since the last meeting.
Okay. I think where we left it off was that he was looking at a phased approach, but and we wanted some more detail on that. So we have not heard anything from him at the time. Okay.
We did get a letter from a resident though, right?
Yes, we did.
Recently, okay.
Yeah, I don't remember if that was immediately before the last meeting or since
No, it
then.
was after the last meeting,
Was it?
yeah.
Excuse me. And that's already been added to the case, I believe, correct?
That should be part of the record, yes.
Okay. Okay. So since we have not heard anything, one, just to double check, the board got a copy of it. We
I
had not,
did.
fine, okay. Just sort of what I thought. Okay, I would entertain a motion to, let me talk dates first before we do the motion. Because I'm thinking of a continuance. Since we have a standing request for continuance with Mr. Carter, I think until he got a driveway permit. But didn't we get a driveway permit?
So Mr. Carter has both since asked to begin proceedings again. So we don't have that standing request anymore. And you are correct, the driveway permit was issued, I believe it was like the day of or day before the last meeting.
Yeah.
So that was also forwarded to the board with conditions.
Right.
Are
Are we following under then the executive or emergency orders? Okay.
That's correct. So I believe it was, I know some of our procedures were under emergency order 23, but one of the emergency orders exempted us from standard timelines and it
Timeline.
mentions explicitly review of
Yeah, site plans.
applications for site plan or subdivision approval. So legally, we can continue to go beyond the 90 days under that emergency order. Yeah, it's not something that we would like to do regularly, but where Mr. Carter isn't here
Yes.
to speak to his application, I don't know that there's much that we can do without him.
Right. Okay. So under the emergency orders issued by the governor exempting us from timeline or time frame decisions, I would entertain a motion to, well, let's talk dates before I start, because that's where I started off on this. We have calendar here.
May 13th and 27th.
Yes.
Yeah.
7th. Okay. And if we've got, let's think about this for a minute.
Yeah.
We've
Think about
got 6
how-
applications coming in.
that but then you're continuing next on the 22nd.
Yep.
Remember, you're going to continue those. When are you continuing those two?
Well, which ones do we have on the 22nd? I think it's only Chestnuts from the Cape.
Also Aroma Joe's.
Roma Joe's.
Those, okay.
But, I just wanted you to keep that in mind.
Yes. Because what I'm thinking out loud here, the issue with the 22nd is that is school deliberation or deliberative session. And I think some people might want to attend that.
Well,
So
I will definitely.
Some people have to be there.
Yes.
Oh.
Which brings the question of whether we'll have a quorum or not.
Well, I do have 4 confirmed that will at least come on long enough to do administrative continuances if necessary.
Okay. So that would be the intent for the 22nd. And, if we provide that or do that, I would request of town staff that they notify applicants, as quickly as possible that it'll be a pro forma meeting for continuances so that, like for instance, Mr. Leva doesn't need to be on if Mr. Nallid can cover for that, put on the clock. Not my decision to make though, as to who attends. We'd be looking at April 29th for an additional meeting as a result to discuss the first part of the 6 new applications we received this month.
Right.
And I would be reluctant to, well.
So
Yeah, how much do we
assuming-
have coming in?
If we were to assume that all 6 of those applications were ready for a quick decision and we put them on the 13th, the workshop, that would mean that would be a fairly heavy night.
Correct.
So, I think the question is whether to put this case on the 13th and be prepared for a long meeting, or to continue Mr. Carter's application to May 27th in an attempt to avoid the majority of those 6 applications.
Right. Um,
I mean, there's two
That's
of them
what
on
I-
Thursday.
Go ahead, Linda.
Well, the other question is Chestnut and Cape is already in the pipeline and already
Correct.
started.
Correct.
So.
And I'm hesitant to have the meet on, just continue for a month on the 22nd.
What about the 6th of
I
May?
was
That's what I'm thinking.
I mean, if you want to schedule additional meetings, we can talk about that. I was envisioning that the two cases that we had continued to the 22nd, that administratively we would just be bumping them back to the 29th,
That's
where
sort
we're
of what I'm
scheduling
thinking
the
as well.
catch-up meeting.
That's going to
So-
be a long meeting then.
Well, can we talk about, without divulging too much or diverging too much from what we're doing, the 6 cases are what? Are they, site plan review, subdivision? Without going into,
It's a mix. 2 of them are things that we think are worth taking to TRC, so we will be doing that next week.
okay,
But that's mostly because they are unusual than because they are particularly large.
Okay.
So I think it's more a where some of them have complications, it's because of statutes that we don't work with regularly, or types of applications we don't work with regularly, not necessarily because there's something that at least I see as particularly controversial or overly large.
okay. Because usually I hope I don't jinx myself here. Usually with a 2-meeting format, the first meeting is essentially, hi, what do you want to do? Case for public comment, questions, immediate burning questions from the board as far as missing information or something to that effect, or what you want to see, questions. And then the second one is, after having a chance to digest it, is where we get into action items. So 6 applications on a first meeting is not terrible, figuring that they last anywhere from 20 minutes to half hour, 40, and that's up to the chair to speed them along.
So
I would
I
think,
think that there's maybe one that I think may not go quite as fast as the others.
Yep.
I'm not going to say which one tonight.
yeah, no.
But yeah, not having done my staff reports yet, my initial knee jerk is that, probably 4 or 5 of them we would be able to move relatively quickly and reconvene at the work session
Okay.
to render a decision. 1, maybe 2 would be things that we might think about putting for the end of the month if it's going to take longer to get some resolution.
Okay. So I would, the other factor to consider for Mr. Carter is that, through no fault of our own, he's already looking at not being able to capture most of the summer, since he hasn't started construction yet. And that was one wish of his. So what I would suggest, and I'm going to propose this for discussion before we make a motion, to make it somewhat cleaner when we do actually propose that, is that Chestnut and Cape on the 22nd and Aroma Joe's on the 22nd, we move to the 29th. Have we received any information from Aroma Joe's?
No.
We haven't, but we can, if we let them know between now and the 22nd what we're planning to do, and that we're suggesting to bump them back by a week. If either of the applicants decide that, they're not ready to come back because they have additional things that they need to do, we'll ask them to suggest a different date from the 29th.
Okay. Because I'm thinking that could be, okay, well, let me restate that again. So Chestnut and Cape, Aroma Joe's move from the 22nd, continue administratively from the 22nd to the 29th. So on the 29th, we would have 6 new applications for the first part of the meeting, plus Chestnut and Cape and Aroma Joe's. On the May 13th, we would have part 2 of the 6
Oh,
meetings,
like 5 of them.
or 5 of them. And whatever we decide on the 29th with Chestnut and Cape and Aroma Joe's. Okay. And then on the 27th, so that would leave Carter I'm thinking move Carter to the 27th.
Okay.
Because then we'll have anything that continues on for the April applications and or Chestnut and Cape and or Aroma Joe's we would be on for the 27th. How does that sound from staff perspective?
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, I would like to suggest that a letter be sent from staff. I don't know, James, if you want to draft that. We have tried by email and telephone, and there's a real communication, a hole in the communication, that we either send a certified letter or just a general letter to Mr. Carter to try to find out if he is still working on things, so that there's some communication between the staff and the board and Mr. Carter.
Okay.
The
I
last
have,
communication that I had with him was a phone call after, and I returned the call and I left a message, but he had said something to the effect that he thought he needed to get a special exception. But I have not received anything on that. I emailed him as well, and I put him on the conservation agenda because I wasn't sure if he was going to come in and talk to them, but I have not had any communication whatsoever. But I think a letter to his home might
Okay.
get some type of response, so that we know whether we should keep this going further.
Okay. I certainly would have no problems doing so, and just possibly remind him that, you know, the conditional or a standing request for continuances conditions have been met, and that if the executive orders are lifted, you know, we're then under time frame, and the board would need to, barring a request for continuance, the board would need to render a decision. Then, so I guess a little bit of teeth to it. But I'm James or Linda or whoever would want to, or do you want me to draft it?
No, I'm sure James, if
Yeah,
James wanted to draft something.
I'm happy to
and
draft it. Yeah, as I indicated with some of the phasing things, yeah, my last communication with him and sort of how the last several rounds have gone is that we have received a letter that he's printed and signed, emailed to us, scanned and emailed in. I have replied to it with some follow-up items, and then that's fairly typically where the breakdown is. But I want to at least get those replies in writing as part of the record. And the board has seen several of those conversations at this point with what we've shared with you. So
Is-
I think a letter would be a way to get some of those things into the record and explain some of the outstanding questions and concerns that I have that I think need to be addressed.
Okay.
Um,
One second, Tim. One other thing that may or may not be appropriate, but it might help. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. It would be a request for his preferred means of communication. If he wants to respond by email, we'll respond by email. If he prefers a letter, we'll send a letter. A phone call doesn't matter. If we'll put our hand out there to say, we'll respond as you would prefer, but we need to know how you want to respond because we're not getting anything. So, Tim, go ahead.
So I'm very comfortable with the letter idea. The only thing that I would like to see happen is it be run by the chair before it goes out. Number one. Number two, is my understanding we're talking about April 22nd, 29th, 13th, and 27th.
Correct, for
My
meeting.
personal feelings are, I would rather have, let's say, meetings from 6:30 to 9 o'clock, reasonable length meetings.
Mhm.
So because we have 6 new applicants, we put some into the 6th of May, that would not bother me at all. So I'm just throwing that out there. So in other words, if we spread it out a little thinner and included the 6th of May and the 13th, 27th, in order to make meetings that are not lengthy into the evening,
Mhm.
et cetera. That would be my preference.
I agree. We don't make good decisions or as good as decisions late in the evening.
Oh yeah, I completely
So
agree.
part of why we discussed going back to the 6:30 timeline that was our standard procedure was because we had a provision in the board's rules and procedures that states that you cannot take up a new item of business after, I think it's either 9 or 9:30. I
9:30.
believe we said
9:30.
9:30.
9:30. Yeah.
So that's also a reminder for tonight, so we can keep this one going. But it stipulates that any new business that has been submitted and hasn't had a decision on completeness yet, that you have to at least, or you have the ability to act on completeness to meet the statutory timeline, and then immediately continue to the next meeting.
Right.
As we just discussed, we have that handy dandy emergency order that's exempting us from timelines, but I think in the interest of at least opening the public hearings so that we can get testimony in writing from people, that we stick to all 6 cases on the 29th, all 6 of the new cases, even if it's simply, we call the case, we move to find it complete, we give the applicant like a 30-second presentation to explain to people watching on YouTube, and then we continue to the next meeting for testimony.
Yeah.
But I would like to stick to a decision on completeness within 30 days of submittal, if at all possible.
And I think that's quite reasonable to do. So,
Well, this may also persuade you about dates.
Yeah.
I already have application number 7, which came in just a little late to be added, so that is already in for May,
okay.
3 weeks ahead, so
Yeah.
we're getting quite a few.
We're getting a few. Yeah, it's construction season. So, and real estate prices are up, and I think people are interested for that reason. Okay, let's get back to Carter. So what I'm thinking is for Mr. Carter, we continue Carter to the 27th of May. The April applications would be heard on the 29th. Chestnut and Cape and Aroma Joe's would be on the continued pro forma on the 22nd to the 29th. And when we inform them of our reasons for that, that we could request another, if they have a suggestion for another date, that would be fine. You know, either 13th or the 27th of May.
So all 6 new cases and Roma Joe's and Chestnut Cake on the 29th.
Well, yes, for.
I mean, I'm just trying to, because I'm trying to write this down.
Exactly. Yes, that's
I'm
what I'm.
getting very confused.
It could be very confusing. The heavy night on case of that will be Chestnut and Cape and or Roma Joe's. If Roma Joe's has something, and they're today's the 8th, 10 days out. They theoretically within 10 days could get us new information, and we'd have to see what will happen.
Okay.
But I'm very reluctant to push off those 6 new cases beyond the 30 days unless we really have to. And especially with meat of the applications or the meat of the hearing coming on the second meeting, which would be May.
Okay.
See, Hal, if you hadn't extended the election date, I wouldn't have to be dealing with this.
Exactly.
Okay.
I was thinking now that we got the excavation thing done, that maybe, you'd consider re-upping, so to
I
speak.
can't do that. Already missed the deadline.
Well,
okay.
we'll nominate.
There's write-in.
Yeah.
There is write-ins.
Let's start the writing campaign right now.
Maybe there's an exception because of COVID.
Anyway, so I would suggest entertain a motion to continue Joseph Carter Father and Family Trust Case 19-6 to May 27th.
So move.
Second.
Goodness. I got two motions,
Let's go
2
for
seconds. Okay, we'll give the motion to Ms. Baldwin and the second to Mr. Kreider. Discussion?
Do we want to include that letter in this motion?
I think that's can be chair. Is that chair's prerogative?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do chair's prerogative on that. So that's included, but we had a chance to discuss it, and that's a good thing to do. But I will take Tim's suggestion, and I'd love a copy before you sign it. Or if you want to dress it for me, that's fine too. Makes no difference. Okay, discussion on the motion. Hearing none, Susan could do a roll call vote, please.
Tim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes,
Did you say Joe?
yep,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, next up is cases 21-5 and 21-6, which are being heard together. Welcome back to Mr. Frankowitz.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Mr. Wilkinson is with us as well, as is Mr. Brackett. I think I got everybody, at least on this case. So we got you going last week. We've heard from testimony or public comment and abutters comments. Let me pull up my notes here.
Are you opening public comment again?
I will, but not right now. Okay. Oops, wrong page. Sorry. Mr. Frankwitz, what do you have for us?
I believe we got through all the comments. There was no butter. We have 2 waivers that need to be acted on, and
Yep.
I believe that's it. With there was very little comments on the last meeting. So
Okay.
we did submit another waiver for the lot topo that was requested at the last meeting, and we got the driveway waiver to act on.
Okay. I'm looking through my. printout of my staff notes is missing. Okay, so we have waivers for, let me pull that up here.
So we received a waiver request
Yep.
to section 4.10 site information. And that was, where we were showing contours and wetlands on some of the backland in the parcel. Mr. Franco has substituted GIS information. There was a full boundary line survey of the parcels, but not a full topographic survey.
Yep.
I think that the way the regulations break down with the boundary line adjustment, because remember, this is technically two applications that need to be acted on sequentially.
Correct.
So where we have the boundary line adjustment and where we have the second application to subdivide the larger parcel, it's my interpretation that only the subdivision application needs that waiver, because the boundary line adjustment only needs to show the immediate area of the boundary line being adjusted. So when that waiver is acted upon, I would suggest making it explicit that it is for the subdivision application. The other waiver that was requested for the driveway is also only something that is a factor in the subdivision application.
Okay. You have that noted in your staff review, so.
Yep, so both of the waivers apply to the same case.
Okay.
As it were.
What I'm thinking procedurally is that we deal with, well, open public comment, first of all, through both cases. Deal with the waivers on 21.6, because they both apply to 21.6, the subdivision. Then we can get into discussion of the completion
sequence of events,
or sequence of events, or final aspects of it. Okay. At this time, I will open public comment on case 21.5 and 21.6. Glenn and Shirley Brackett and Alan Wilkinson, Margaret McGoldrick. If you are in the meeting and would like to speak, please do so or get my attention. Hearing none, I will close public comment on cases 21.5 and 21.6. Okay. I would like to entertain a motion for case 21-6 only to act on, notice my language. So when you make your motion, you need to decide whether you want to approve or deny. Section 303B1 for a shared driveway.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to note that my condition for that one is a little bit different from normal. There already is a note on the plan set related to this one. So all that Mr. Frankwitz needs to do is update the date of approval by the board. And this was the one where we also asked Mr. Frankwitz to further specify that the waiver only applies to the section that stipulates that the driveway must follow the boundary line, and does not waive the provision that the driveway cannot serve more than two principal residences.
Okay. If someone wanted to make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. You need to include whether
As stipulated.
to approve.
To approve.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Ms. Betty Smith. Discussion on the approval of the waiver for the shared driveway. Susan can do a roll call vote, please. Oh,
Is that
sorry.
a question by Hal?
yes, Hal?
I just want to make sure we stated clearly that part of this is we're doing it for safety reasons because of the site distances and stuff.
I think we added that, that was in discussion the last time. So it'll be in the minutes. Do you want it explicit in the motion?
No, I was more reminding folks.
Okay,
It's in the minutes in the
in the
discussion
minutes.
last meeting.
okay. Susan, could do a roll call vote, please.
Joe,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes,
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. And the second,
I did not reissue a staff report after the additional waiver request from Mr. Frankowitz, so I pulled up his letter requesting it. That is a requested waiver to section 4.10 site information, the existing conditions as it relates to site information. This section reads, for minor subdivisions and major subdivisions, contours at 2-foot intervals shall be required, except that lots which remain 10 acres or more shall have 5-foot contour intervals unless otherwise required by the planning board. The applicant is requesting a waiver to allow use of GIS information for parts of that topographic information instead of surveyed topography due to the size of the parcel, and those are in locations that are towards the back and not likely to be subject to development.
So moved.
Second.
okay. Motion by Mr. Jandeber to approve, second by Ms. Betty Smith. Discussion. Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Susan, you're muted.
Joe,
Who'd
Joe?
you say?
Joe?
Joe, yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Hal,
yes,
Lee,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. Anything else on either case? Questions from the board? Okay. And I think Mr. Frankowitz, as you know, our routine, that second waiver needs to be on your plan, set in a note someplace.
Yes.
So we need to, we're talking approvals or denials, decisions. We need to do these separately. And I would entertain a motion on the boundary line adjustment, which is case 21-5.
Would you like me to read the conditions prior to the motion?
Sure. Yeah, okay.
So I'm suggesting conditions of approval for boundary line adjustment case 21-5. Prior to the signing of plans, number 1, provide certification of monument installation as required by section 3.06 of the subdivision regulations. Number 2, deliver 3 signed and stamped copies of the plan and 1 signed and stamped Mylar to the town for signature. Condition subsequent, number 3, record the plat with the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds within 1 year of this decision.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Jandeber, second by Ms. Betty Smith. I was looking for those. I didn't scroll down far enough. Sorry. Discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none. Susan, could do a roll call vote, please.
Hal,
yes,
Betty,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. One half. And
Recommended conditions of approval for subdivision case 21-6. prior to the signing of plans, number one, boundary line adjustment case 21-5 shall be approved and the plan signed. Number two, provide certification of monument installation as required by section 3.06 of the subdivision regulations. Number three, deliver 3 signed and stamped copies of the plan and 1 signed and stamped Mylar to the town for signature. Number four, all necessary state and local permits shall be received and a copy delivered to the town, including but not limited to a town of Northwood driveway permit for the shared driveway. Prior to the issuance of the building permit, condition 5, the plat for boundary line adjustment case 21-5 shall be recorded prior to or concurrently with the plat for this application. Number 6, record the plat and easement language for the shared driveway with the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds within 1 year of this decision. Number 7, a state-approved septic design will be provided for each lot prior to issuance of a building permit for that lot.
Okay,
So moved.
do we have a
For
second?
approval.
Second,
Okay. Motion by Mr. Jandeber, second by Ms. Baldwin. Discussion on the approval motion? Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Tim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes.
Betty,
yes,
Joe,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. Thank you both,
Thank you.
all three. Okay. That is all but internal business. Just as a, how do we handle, I guess I can call the meeting for the 29th for the 6 cases, but I want the board to be aware of that. We've talked about it. So on Thursday, the 22nd, we do need 4 of you, myself included, I think, at least need to meet on the phone or in person, however, online, to hear the cases we scheduled for that night, just to continue them.
Mr. Chair, I think because we have noticed for Zoom, if you can call the phone number to be on the Zoom, you don't need to get to a computer.
Right.
But I think we do need to have that, those motions to continue on the Zoom in the public eye.
Yes, that's what I was assuming. But that'll be the case for the 22nd. Then we have what would be our regular meeting on the 29th. We'll have to notice our irk with the school board. That's okay. And other than that, I think we have there was a training, OSI training. Did that already occur?
I thought so.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I wasn't planning on attending.
I thought that's what Hal said he was just at. Maybe?
No, I was at the municipal training on Tuesday.
No, sorry, that's
Oh.
May 15th.
Oh, okay.
The spring 2021 Planning and Zoning Conference is online. There's it's free.
It's a reduced conference this year. They're not doing as many sessions as usual, but they will still be happening.
There's planning board basics and roles and responsibilities of the planning board and or zoning board. For new members, it's even older members, it's a very good document or presentation, essentially, what you're supposed to be doing.
That does conflict with the town's deliberative session.
Yeah. And I have a event at my school on that day as well, but I'll figure something out. Other than that, that's all I have. Unless anybody needs to bring something else up for discussion. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was laughing. I'm sorry.
Okay. I do want to add a note to town staff that we do have that. I think we talked about the idea of the waiver that we just did for the brackets of splitting that regulation up so that it's clear that if you waive that section, that it doesn't.
Yeah, we
that
can
language.
do that. The thing that I said in response last time was that it's been several years since we've touched the subdivision regulations. So I would be looking, it's easier than zoning. We don't need to send anything to town meeting.
Right.
But I would be looking for direction from you as to whether we are opening all of the subdivision regulations for discussion and trying to think about any things that we want to be changing, or whether we're intending to just clean up that one section and postpone a more detailed review.
No,
And we don't need to have that discussion tonight.
no, we
That's
don't.
just what I would be looking for.
Yep.
So I know what I'm working on.
Right. I would, well, since I sort of set the agenda, I would figure that I'll let the next chair take that on. Okay. It's more that I keep my sticky notes of things that would need to be addressed, and I want to put that in there. Okay. Anything else for tonight?
As I mentioned, 2 of the 6 cases are going to be on TRC. So we'll be doing that process for a second time. And I believe we reached out to those 2 applicants to let them know if they'd like to attend. Susan added 2 674-41 applications to the agenda. So take a look at those for next time. Just because I ran into it today when I was working on something for the Conservation Commission, friendly reminder that we do have 1 or 2 proposed zoning amendments on the ballot for town meeting. So, we have already done all of the necessary public hearings for those items. But if people have questions or have forgotten about those, this may be a good time to start looking for those materials either online, or you can reach out to town staff and we can send you a copy of those zoning amendments so you can take a look before you see them on the ballot.
Yep. I always have always made myself available at deliberative session or after deliberative session if nobody wants to talk about it, or talk about it afterward.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add,
Sure.
for people's information, that the town 2020 town reports are available at Town Hall during regular business hours.
Okay. Thank you. So noted. Where they're usually kept in the large meeting room?
They are, but if there's some right on the table as you walk in the door.
Okay, good. I'll grab one tomorrow then. Okay, if we have nothing else, I would entertain a motion to
So moved.
adjourn.
Second.
3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, I think. Good night. We're adjourned at 8:50. Thank you.
Good night, all.
And all.
Good night.